What's up guys, it's KH Limited. Welcome to episode 16 of Spill the Tearal, which is a JRPG podcast where I go over some JRPG news, releases, mechanics, what I've been playing, want to play, and more. And this week on this episode, we're going to be talking about things such as me finishing Persona 4 Golden and starting Star Ocean Divine Force. There's going to be some Wuthering Waves and Elden Ring news, and how I'd like a Trails in the Sky remake and more. So that's going to be what we're going to be going over, but before that, some housekeeping stuff I want to mention. Firstly, I don't know why I never mentioned this. I remember to mention this, I believe, at the end of last episode, but I want to try to mention it at the start. But if you are listening to this show on audio services, please remember to rate the podcast 5 stars. That really helps audio service podcasts, and that's really the only way people will be served my podcast. If you listen to it and rate it highly, it will get served to other people. And if you're not using any of the major ones, if you can just go to Apple Podcasts or whatever and just rate it 5 stars, that would be very much appreciated. Thank you so much. If I bring even a few minutes of joy to your day from you listening to this, that'd be very much appreciated. Thank you so much. Moving on from that, I mentioned this before, but if you don't know, I do have a Twitter/X account for this podcast called Spill the Tearal, which is me just talking about the podcast, but in general, me just talking about, the games I've been playing and questions about that. I am pretty active on it. I do tweet a few times a day, maybe once every couple of days. It kind of varies, but I do stay active on it. And I've been kind of talking about my journey with Persona 4, my thoughts on it live as I've been playing it, when I finish it, how I got the bad ending, good ending, etc., etc. So if you're interested in that at all, be sure to follow me on Twitter. It is at Spill the Tearal, which is just the name of the podcast. So thank you for that. I did want to mention that I mentioned this last time that I might be trying a new thing this episode, and I am going to be trying it this time, which I mentioned that I have the segment in this podcast, which is a JRPG I'm looking forward to. That I mentioned that segment is getting kind of hard to do because there's not that many JRPGs I'm looking forward to. I've already talked about 15 of them, and I can't infinitely keep talking about JRPGs that are on the horizon that I'm looking forward to. So I'm going to be kind of changing the segment slightly, where I'm going to be talking about a JRPG that I would look forward to, so a hypothetical JRPG. And in the future, if there is a JRPG that I'm looking forward to, I will just talk about that. But if there is, for example, a type of game that I would want to have X, Y, and Z, I can talk about that too, and I'm going to be doing that this episode too, so you'll see how that goes in this episode. And other than that, the recommendation or something cool actually that I want to show you that I've been doing in the last several episodes, I want to show this coin I have, which is this 50 Miro coin. So for audio listeners, I'm just showing it. It is in this cool collector's plastic case that came with it. It is 50 Miro. And at the back, you could just see a person. I don't know if the person is special. Pretty much what this coin is, it's from the Trails of Cold Steel world, or the Trails world in general. They use Mira as their money. And the reason that 50 Mira is special is because there's actually a moment in Trails of Cold Steel 1 when a character named Crow meets a main character, Rean. He kind of scams Rean out of 50 Mira, and so it's kind of a funny scene between them. And Crow was actually a pretty important character in the story, so that moment was always cool. Crow is actually my favorite character in the series, so when I heard about this 50 Mira coin, I really wanted it. Apparently, it was only given in the collector's edition, or whatever the name is, of Trails of Cold Steel 1. And while that used to be available when I first played the game, by the time I was actually a fan of the series, it just wasn't being sold anywhere, so I couldn't buy it from Best Buy or Amazon or whatever. And if I did want to, it would be on Amazon for marked up to $200+, which I wasn't going to pay. And so luckily, at 3 a.m. one night, while it was in my Amazon's wish list, where it was always sold out, I got a notification saying it was available, and it was available for MSRP. It wasn't marked up, so I ordered it right away, got it, and I got it for MSRP. So I got the coin and whatever else came with the collection. I didn't really care about the rest, but yeah, I just wanted to show this coin because it's really cool. It's my favorite game series, and it's a straight up proper metal coin. It just came with a plastic case, which I keep it in because that is dope. And before we start the podcast proper, as I always do, let's show our random Spirited Away playing card because the art on them is dope, and we will randomly pick the 4 of clubs. I don't know if I picked this one, but it's a pretty iconic shot. It is a shot of the main girl and the no-face, no-name guy. I can't remember his name. And yeah, they're just chilling on the train, and you can see the beautiful sky outside. And on that note, let's start with what I've been playing. So for the what I'm playing section, it's going to be interesting for this episode because I played a decent amount of games. One of the most important things is that I actually finished Persona 4 Golden. Last week I talked about kind of my starting thoughts, and I was very negative on the episode of Persona 4, which I didn't like, and so this week I'm going to be talking more positively about it. And the thing that's going to be different is I actually already recorded that segment pretty much right when I finished the game, a day after I decided to record my thoughts on it because it was more fresh at the time, and so I recorded the segment about Persona 4 specifically a few days ago, and so we're going to cut to that right now. Alright, so this is me about 2 days in the past, and I'm going to be talking about my experience with Persona 4. Now, last episode, I actually started talking about Persona 4 and my thoughts on it, and since then, I have finished it, and I have gotten 2 endings, and so I'm going to be talking about my overall thoughts on Persona. And one thing I kind of want to make clear, because while I was editing last episode, I realized I sounded very negative on the game, which like, because I just got into like this train of thought of talking about the negative aspects of the game, and I kind of went with it. But like when I was editing it, I was like, you know what? This is like, the tone of this is very different from what I actually feel. And even though I wasn't the most positive about the game, I did mention last episode that if the game does turn upward and just kind of like cool things that happen or cool twists that happen, I think I would like the game more. And thankfully, exactly that happened. I think the game is a lot better than I thought. And because of that, I do think it is. I kind of see why it's a game at the echelon it is at. So I kind of want to dedicate today's episode of me talking about Persona to talk more about the positives of the game, because not only did the game get better since last time I played it, but also because I didn't really talk about any of the positives last time that I want to mention this time. So let's get straight into that. So the difference from last time is, I believe last time I had played the game for about like, I think 20 to 30 hours, somewhere there. And since then I finished the game, and I think I'm like probably around 45, maybe just under 50 hours. And pretty much what I did since then is I did like a couple more dungeons, bonding with people, and finished the story. I know who the murderer is now. And at first I got the bad ending, which I think is very funny because the game tries really fucking hard to give you the bad ending, because after I got the bad ending, I googled it, and you almost have to use a guide to get one of the good endings, because you have to go through this very specific conversation where you have to use these specific prompts. And funnily enough, on my first try, like without using a guide, I almost got that exact conversation. I just got the last prompt wrong. But yeah, so I got that conversation wrong, and I got the bad ending. And the bad ending wasn't like necessarily like bad in the sense that like everything just like went to hell. It was just bad as in it was very depressing. So when I finished it, I'm like, is this a bad ending? Because it was very depressing. You kind of solved the murder in quotes. Then it just skipped 3 months and your friend said goodbye to you. It was very like cloudy and shitty looking, and very depressingly, everyone just looked at you as you left, and the game just ended. No music really, the credits just rolled, and I was like, this kind of sucks, what happened? And then I googled it, yeah, there's a good ending. And in terms of what the difference is, you pretty much get to play a couple more dungeons, and you have to figure out who the actual murderer is. So in the bad ending, you find Amatame, which was the secretary pretty much introduced at the start of the game, who was cheating on his wife with the first victim that ends up dying in the murder mystery. You find out that he's the one who's actually been putting people in the TVs, but that's how the bad ending ends. In the good ending, you find out that he actually didn't kill anyone. He actually thought he was saving everyone, and the real murderer was Adachi, which was the partner of Dojima, your like guardian in Inaba. And the funny thing about this is that when it happened, I was like, oh cool, it's Adachi. But for some fucking reason, I don't know why. It could be because I'm kind of trained to expect twists from the Trails games, because if you didn't know, Neon Falcom's games, whether it's Trails or East, they just fucking have a bunch of twists, which I love. And so like when we first met Adachi in the game, I'm like, this is gonna be the murderer. Like, I don't know why. I don't know if it was because he was too nice or what, but like, I'm like, I don't know. He just seems like he's introduced pretty early. He seems pretty close to the family. He's like a police officer being the murderer is kind of cool. So I'm like, I think he's going to be the murderer. And at some point, I forgot about that. Then at some point in the game, they showed the silhouette of the murderer in the fog. And I don't know why they did this, but the silhouette of the fog, like the pose the silhouette was in, was the exact same as Adachi. So I'm like, why? That kind of gave it away to me, where like Adachi has like this very like specific hump he walks with, like he's kind of slouching, and you don't really see any characters, or at least the main characters, walk like that. So when I saw that silhouette, I'm like, that looks like Adachi, but I'll kind of forget about that. And then like I kind of forgot about me thinking he was a murderer. And then as the game kind of ramped up to guess who was a murderer, I guess Adachi ended up being correct, and that's how it went. And so that's pretty cool. And to kind of start with the positives of the game, one of the positives I want to talk about is I kind of love that to solve the actual mystery of the murderer, the entire onus is on the player, like me actually playing the game, and it wasn't like on the protagonist of the game. What I mean is, like, I expected this murder mystery to be a thing where like they kind of talk you through who they think the murderer is, and then like the protagonist just guesses, or maybe they give you like two options to pick from or whatever. But they straight up make you, the player, figure it out, because all they said was like, okay, the murderer has to have connections to these few characters, and that's pretty much it. And then they gave a list of every character it might have been. And the funny thing is, Adachi was the correct answer, but he was like on the 4th page in the list of names. So like they really wanted you to like know who the person is. Like you couldn't guess it, because if you guessed, you'd have to go through like 10, 15 other names or something like that just to get to Adachi. So it was really funny and cool. I think that they really needed you to know who the murderer is to get it right. Like I can't even imagine going through the list if I didn't know who the murderer was. So luckily I got it my first try. I just expected it was Adachi. Even though the hints they gave, I think didn't really help me in thinking it was Adachi. I think some of it, like, I didn't even understand because they would say, like, the murderer is connected to these two people. And I was like, I don't know if Adachi is connected to these people, but, like, let me just guess Adachi, and I ended up being correct. So the game didn't even help me in that sense. It's just, like, from my instinct, I was able to guess Adachi, so that was cool. So that was one positive where they actually make the player guess who the murderer is, which I liked. And just to kind of head back a bit into the gameplay of the game, and I'm going to mention some points that I want to mention in the last episode, but I just never got to because I kind of got into this negative rant, which I didn't like. But some of the positives that I want to note was, one of the things that I like that the game does is the voices feature. Now, if you never played this game, they have this feature which is called voices, and pretty much whenever you're just exploring Inaba, you could touch your touchpad, and when you do that, these speech bubbles come up, and they're pretty much speech bubbles of anyone else who's played Persona 4, and it tells you what they have done when they were playing this section of the game. So, for example, if I press it, it might say, like, 5 of them might say, like, oh, they hung out with Yosuke today. Some say they hung out with Yukiko. Some say they ended up studying. Some say they just went straight home. So they had that feature where, like, at a single tap of the button at any point in the game, you can check what people have done. And the reason I like this, and I use this a lot earlier in the game, but I kind of stopped using it later in the game, is because it can kind of tell you at a glance what's available for you, and I like that. So sometimes, like, when I was kind of getting into the monotony of the days and I kind of want to get past them quick, I was like, okay, the only thing I really would want to do today is hang out with Yosuke. So I'd press the voices feature, I'll see if that's an option. If it is, I'd be like, cool, I'd go to Yosuke and hang out. If it wasn't there, then I would just do something else and I wouldn't even bother checking. Now, it's a good feature. I like it. I think at the end of the day, I would have rather just had a feature where it just gave you a list of what was possible. Like, it didn't even have to be this cool feature that it shows what everyone, like, online has done, because it's based on what people have done online. It's not perfect. What I mean is, there were certain situations where, like, for example, there was a day that I kind of felt like hanging out with Adachi, and I checked the voices feature, and none of them said hanging out with Adachi, but I still ended up just checking outside to see if he wanted to hang out, and he was there, and I could hang out with him. So if I just fully trusted the voices feature, I would have missed out, and that's because it is fallible. It is based on real people. So I think, honestly, what I would have preferred is if the voices feature was just like a shortcut feature where it just straight up shows you every choice you had and you can just teleport to whoever you wanted to and do the task like that. So that's just something, a critique that I would have preferred. But then again, like, this is a feature I'd never seen before and I thought was very cool. So yeah, voices feature gets a thumbs up for me. And kind of similar to that, another feature which I didn't really use because I am playing the game on an easier mode, but they have a feature when you're in dungeons where if you press the start button or the options button, it kind of sends a signal to other players playing the game, and if they kind of respond back, they kind of buff you in the next battle you do. Now, I didn't fully understand the feature because when they showed me the feature, they said that it was a one-time use per dungeon and it was something that would really buff you. The thing I noticed is it wasn't a one-time use. Like, I kept fucking accidentally pressing it because it was, you know, the start button. Usually that button does something else in games. So constantly in dungeons, I kept pressing it and it kept sending a signal, and constantly I kept getting buffs in battles. So not only was it not one-time use for me, but also the buff seemed, at least from what I can tell, it did, like, pretty fucking useless. Like, for example, if my character has like 400 HP and like 300 SP, which is kind of like your MP meter in this game, the buff would give you like 10 HP and 8 SP, which is like nothing. Like, that doesn't really help you at all. So it was very weird to me that the buffs weren't really that big. And also I noticed a small glitch that whenever someone asked me to help and I sent them help, it wouldn't do it sometimes, and it would just make me turn my signal on for others to help me. So it's kind of weird and glitchy. I thought the idea of the feature was cool, but I think the execution was just really weird for me and it didn't work out as well. But I still want to give it props because I thought that feature was pretty dope too, where, like, it really makes you feel like you're connected with other people who are playing the game. And especially because in the game they actually mentioned that, like, there are you in different universes you can ask help from, which is a very weird thing to say. So, like, I guess that confirms there are other multiverses or whatever in the game, but that was something cool that I noticed too. Kind of staying on that point of me mentioning that this feature wasn't that useful for me because I was playing on an easier difficulty. I really, really appreciate this game having a large range of difficulty modes. I'm not sure if this is just something that was added in the golden version of the game and it wasn't in the original, but instead of there just be, you know, them just forcing a difficulty on you, or instead of there just being an easy, medium, and hard, there was a very easy, medium, hard, and very hard, I think. I was originally going to do normal or easy because I usually like playing easy just so I can get through the story, and I know this may be weird for some people who like playing games for challenge, but I don't play games for challenge at all. I think that if I can get the story, and as long as I'm not just steamrolling everyone, it's a good game. And if I ever have to repeat a boss, I think that just sucks. I hate doing that. And so I was going to pick like normal or easy, But then there was a description for each difficulty, and the very easy mode says something like, if you die in a battle, you get to restart it immediately. So I'm like, I want to do that. I wouldn't want to restart the entire floor. That would be pretty shitty. And so I picked that. What I didn't know was that they meant it literally. What I thought it was going to be was something like Trails, where like if you die in a battle, you restart immediately from, before the battle. But what it ended up being, which is kind of insane to me, was that it literally restarted that instant. So if I was halfway done the boss battle and I died, it would just automatically heal all my characters and I would be at the same point of the battle. And so like you could technically never die. And like I didn't complain. I don't really give a fuck. I mentioned this last episode, but I didn't particularly think that the combat of the game was like anything that special. I didn't think it was that fun. So like that's just my opinion. So the game being on a difficulty where like it didn't matter for me was fine with me. So yeah, I just want to mention that I really like the large range of difficulty modes in the game too. And another thing about the dungeons that I want to mention is, and this is something that I don't really notice in more modern games these days, which I really like about this game, but I think the enemy designs of the game were really fucking good, and that is pretty rare from the games I see. And usually when I watch a game or a game trailer, usually one of the first things I will clock subconsciously is how the enemy designs are. And I've talked about this ad nauseum now, so I won't like mention it too much, but like the Souls games I'm not that big a fan of, and one of the reasons is I think the enemy designs are like not that good. I know that they're obviously they do have like design principles and things like that, but to me they always just look like this weird like grungy mess of like body parts and body horror, and like it just doesn't seem like that interesting to me. Whereas this game, I thought the design was cool. It wasn't like very realistic. It was kind of cartoony. It fit with the style. They had very interesting designs of like some are like armor knights, some are like tables with shit on them, some are trees, some are weird monsters, some are like eyeballs with freaking tongues or some shit, whatever it may be. I thought the designs are all interesting. It all fit the same aesthetic. And I think my favorite one, I just picked a favorite one for fun, trying to find his name. It was called the Blossom Yogo. I thought it looked very cool. I love cherry blossom trees. I like in real life, I think they look fucking beautiful. So there was literally a persona or a shadow that you get to fight that was literally just like a tree, like a cherry blossom tree with like I think it was a yukata, and like it looked really cool. So I thought that was my favorite design. But yeah, I just want to mention that the enemy designs in this game are really good. And also, I also noticed that in the game, and something that I really appreciated, and this is probably just a sign of the times, which you would see be done today with CG cutscenes, but I really appreciated the healthy amount of anime cutscenes in this game. And so pretty much like these days, if you played a game, whenever they would have a CG cutscene in a modern game, this game instead used an anime cutscene. And I don't know if that's something they still do. I don't know if there's something that they still do in Persona 5. But whenever an anime cutscene came on, I was like, oh yeah, this is nice, because it was actually like an anime cutscene. It wasn't like that fake type of anime some games do where it's like more like motion tweening. This was like properly animated. It didn't even particularly look like high budget anime. It looked like pretty like middle of the road normal anime, which I kind of like too. And so I really like seeing those once in a while whenever they needed to show things that couldn't be shown in the game. So I appreciated that being peppered throughout the game too. And the last thing I want to mention about dungeons before I move on to other points, which I really liked, is I really like the feature that you can just pretty much go to the next floor whenever you want once you found the stairs. That's such a small quality of life thing, but if I always had to go back to the stairs to go to the next floor, I know I would get fucking annoyed with that, and I would just go to the next floor immediately, which I sometimes did. But in this game, they have a feature that once you find the stairs to go to the next floor, no matter where you are on that floor, you can just press square and go to the next floor whenever you want, which I really liked. And I'm happy they have that, because they have other things which I don't like, where if you go down a floor, you have to like re-explore the floor again, because it's kind of RNG based. And so that small feature of being able to go to the next floor whenever you want, as long as you found the stairs, very clutch. I really like that. Another thing I really want to touch on, which I didn't get to touch on last time, which sucks, is that I mentioned last time that this story was very linear, that it was only the murder mystery and nothing else. And while I do still think that's true, I thought it was pretty unfair for me not to mention any of the character stories. So while there isn't any like significant B-plot really in the game in terms of story, you do have very small vignettes of character stories with every single person you get to bond with. And so I want to mention that. And I do think they were, for the most part, like, well done, and I kind of liked it. You have Yosuke kind of figuring out his feelings of how to deal with the death of his senpai when that happened, and you just becoming bros. You have Kanji kind of, accepting who he is in terms of, he likes sewing and shit like that, and him at the end of the game opening up a class where he gets to teach that. You have Yukiko kind of figuring out maybe not wanting to be the manager of the Amagi Inn, then at the end choosing to be the manager, Rize being an idol and stuff like that. And so I really liked all those character stories, and like the farther you got, the more information you got about the stories. And I thought the structure of those was good, where those stories were the main reason why I wanted to bond with the characters. So at the beginning, I was bonding with the characters I really wanted to, and that's what I did. So I did that with Yosuke and Kanji, etc. But by the time I got to kind of like near the end of the game, I had already maxed all those bonds, so I started just bonding with other characters, but I didn't really care about too much. But it's still interesting kind of seeing the stories and to see where they would go. And so I think the character stories are well done in the game, and while they're not really that prominent or important in terms of the actual story, I do still think that they were well written. And on top of that, something I really want to mention too is the farther I got into the game, I noticed that the voice acting in the game is really fucking good. Like I was playing with English. I'm not sure if you could even play with Japanese voices, but I thought the English voices were really fucking good, and I really liked that I was able to identify some of the voice actors because this is an older game, and so like Troy Baker, I immediately noticed that he was Kanji. Yosuke, I believe that's Yuri Lowenthal. I didn't go and check, but it sounded like him. And so seeing all these kind of like voice actors that I really know are kind of big names now in this older game was very cool, and I think they did a really good fucking job. I want to give like special props to Yosuke and Chie. It felt like they were giving like 120% in everything they said. Chie is always fucking screaming. And Yosuke, I think he had like the funniest lines in the game. Whenever he said something, it just felt very real. It really felt like he's putting energy into it. And he legitimately seemed like a teenager with what he was saying and how he was saying it. So I thought the voice acting in the game was fantastic. And that's very nice because you don't always get that with JRPGs. Sometimes the voice acting can seem a bit gimped. But with this game, I thought it felt like perfectly native and phenomenal with how the English voice actors did. So I really wanted to give props to that too. And the final thing about the characters in terms of the NPCs you get to bond with that I really liked is I really liked the overarching lesson in everyone's character stories in the entire game overall of like dealing with your identities. That's kind of the entire point of the game, where whenever you went into the TV world to fight everyone's shadow is pretty much them fighting against their two identities, and everyone's character stories was pretty much, you know, accepting your other identity. Rize being an idol, Kanji being like more feminine in terms of his hobbies or stereotypically feminine and things like that. And so I really appreciate that lesson, and I don't think I've played many games with that lesson, and the fact that you get to see so many different examples with so many different characters I thought was very interesting too. And you see that pretty much toward the end too, where like even the twist with Adachi being the murderer, you technically get to see that, where you get to see a side where like he seemed like a nice dude, and like in some ways he was a nice dude. Like I don't think that when you hung out with him it was really fake. When he hung out with you, helped Nanako with homework and things like that, that was an actual side of him. But then you actually get to see the other side of him where like he was so fucking bored with life that he, you know, threw people in TVs just to see them get murdered. So even something as extreme as that, I really like the lesson of identities and how you have to deal with both facets of identities throughout the game. So that was very cool too. And just to talk about some final points so I don't keep rambling about this game that I want to mention, kind of like overall points. One, I really liked the events in the game that kind of broke up the days. I'd mentioned in the last episode where like the game felt very monotonous with the days where you just kind of had to do the same things, bond with certain people, go back home. One thing I failed to mention, and I realized as I was finishing the game, is I think the reason the game felt very monotonous for me was because I was on easy difficulty. And what I mean by that is the way I played the game is whenever I would get, you know, access to saving someone from the TV world, I would finish that on the first day. And then the rest of the days until I got another story beat was just me, you know, doing the loop. Assumably, if I was playing on a harder difficulty, I think what would happen is that I would go into the TV world, fight. At some point, I would get very weak. I would have to come back and then probably spend a few days hanging out with people, go back, fight, rinse and repeat. And because of that, it would feel a bit more balanced. So I think that's why it felt more monotonous to me. But also, I really like the game adding random events throughout the game to make it feel more interesting. I think the second half of the game, the amount of game that I played like in the last week, did this even better because there were so many events that kept coming. Like I have some written down. The band festival thing at Junes where you kind of made a band with your friends and performed. The culture festival where you get to hang out with everyone. Staying at the inn, at the Amagi Inn with everyone is very cool. The ski trip that happened. All those events really break up the days in a way that felt special, and it really showed you special moments between everyone. And the funny thing is, those are probably the most enjoyable parts of the game for me. And I realized after I was done the game, those parts of the game had zero gameplay. Like all those things that I just mentioned, they were just cutscenes pretty much. It was just you talking and going through. But I enjoyed this the most, and that's because I enjoy story in games, so that makes sense. Just a quick anecdote I want to mention because it's kind of funny too. From the Trails games, no spoilers, but there was a point in one of the Trails games where like all the characters had been separated for a long time and they finally joined after like near the end of the game, and they had a conversation about the plot and what was going on. And I remember enjoying that part of the game so fucking much, and the entire cutscene was just you mashing A and just going through the text bubbles of everyone sitting at the table. And that's probably my favorite part of the game. And I'd only noticed after the cutscene was done that cutscene was nearly an hour long. And if I just told that to someone else, it'd be like, that's fucking insane. Why would you want to go through an hour of just people at a table talking and you mash through the text bubbles? But if for someone who's played the game, who enjoys story, who's invested in the plot and the characters, that was the best part of the game. And kind of coming back to Persona, it makes sense why I enjoyed those random events, because even though they were just, cutscenes where you just go through, text bubbles of the characters talking, I really enjoyed that. It just gave nice character moments and gave nice plot points too. So yeah, I really want to mention that too. And the final thing I wanted to mention, the final two things, is before I played Persona, I had this misconception where because people would mention that the game is time-based, where you have to do certain things on certain days, and if you don't really plan things well, if you don't use a guide, you might miss things. And that was always off-putting to me, and that was one of the reasons I never want to play Persona. And when I started playing Persona 4, I was like, I don't want to deal with it. Where people would say yeah, if you need to do something on March 20, you better do that, you better not miss it. And what ended up being true, at least for Persona 4, was that wasn't the case, and I found out that everything was based on when you did things. So it's not that you were able to miss events, is that the events happened whenever you wanted to, and the only way you would miss the event is if you never did it by the end of the game. So let me give an example. At some point in the game, there was a basketball game that was being set up by your friends that they want to do. And your friend mentioned okay, we're gonna have a basketball game soon, and yeah, that's all he said. So what I assumed was that he would set up the basketball game, for example, on March 20th, and then once that day came, if I didn't hang out with him, I would miss the basketball game and just miss out on whatever bonding moments would happen. What actually happens in the game is that basketball game will take place whenever you want it to. So whenever the next time I hang out with them is, that's when the basketball game is going to take place. So that's a big difference from what I thought, and this is a way the game handles things that I actually liked better. So there's not the stress of you think you're going to miss something. It's just that the thing that's going to happen is going to happen at some point whenever you do it. And sure, if you do it too late, there may be future events that you may miss, but because those are so far into the future, you don't really care about it too much. And so I really appreciated the way the game handled that. And so overall, to finish off my thoughts on the game, I think the game was a lot better than I expected. I said that I wanted the game to get better last episode, and it did. And one of the things I think I failed to do last week was taking the perspective of this game in terms of when it came out and what it was, which I failed to do. And I think the reason that's important is one of the games I played recently was Final Fantasy IV. And I had talked about in this podcast in a previous episode too, that it was a very old game, and it was the oldest game probably I played. And the oldest game that I played, that was a JRPG style. And I really enjoyed that game, but I think the reason why I enjoyed that game was because I constantly had the perspective in my head that it was an older game, that it came out in the past, and that it was going to be slightly gamed compared to what we get today. And that's why I enjoyed it. So I think I failed to do that with this game. I kept on comparing it to Trails and more modern games or whatever. And I know Trails is not the most modern game, but Trails still is, I believe, newer than this game by a decent amount. And I kind of checked what this game was. And this game came out on the PS2. And when I thought about that, I was like, you know what? I can see why this game is so loved. I can see why it's so legendary, because while I don't think I would like this game as a kid, because I think it was a bit too real for me in terms of the murder mystery and things like that, and as a kid I wasn't really into that, but in terms of the grand adventure of how long it is, of how much you can do, of how much you can still do, I got the bad ending that was around the 40-hour mark. I got the good ending at the 50-hour mark, and there's still the true ending I can get, which I probably won't do because I was satisfied with the good ending. But there's so much content in the game, and I googled, there's secret bosses and so much extra shit to do, where as a kid, if I was kind of into this type of plot, I would have fucking loved the amount of content, because I remember as a kid, I would try to check every single corner of the game. When I used to play Kingdom Hearts 2, I would go into every world repeatedly, check every single corner to see if I could boundary break anything, if was there any extra story bits or cutscenes that I missed. And so if I had this game when I was a kid, I would be all over it as long as it was in my taste. But yeah, I think overall this game is very good. I was wrong about it last time saying it was a meh game. That's kind of what I put on the thumbnail. I'm still going to say, I don't think it is at the level of Trail still. This game specifically, I don't think it still touches like any of the Trails games. I still think it's better than this, but I still think Persona is a good game. Persona 4 specifically is a good game, and one day I do want to try Persona 5 Royal to see how that is. I don't think I'm going to try it anytime soon because this is a long game. I kind of want to take a break from the Persona series, but I'm glad that my first experience with a full Persona game did end up being positive at the end. And those are my full thoughts on Persona 4. Now let's get back to future me to go through the rest of the podcast. Peace. Okay, and we are back from the Persona 4 segment. Hopefully that transition worked fine. And other than Persona 4, pretty much after I was done Persona 4, I was kind of experimenting with different games to see what I want my next JRPG to be. So I actually have a list of other games I tried. Final Fantasy X, I tried for a bit because I was on PlayStation Plus Extra. Weirdly enough, it's been on PlayStation Plus Extra for what feels like forever, but the day I tried it was the last day it was on the collection, so a day after I tried the game, I didn't have access to it anymore, which sucks. I wasn't too sad about it because from the little I played an hour or an hour and a half. I didn't really like it, honestly. The vibes or like the world atmosphere I don't like too much. It looked not the best. The UI was very janky. The combat I wasn't in love with, so like it wasn't something that I was, that excited to go back to anyways. But yeah, those are just like my first hour. So I'm gonna play the game at some point again. But from the first hour, I wasn't too much a fan of it. I tried Xenogears because I heard that's a really amazing game. I got it on an emulator on my phone because emulators are just on the App Store now. And it seems pretty cool. Honestly, I kind of like it. I didn't play much more of it because the emulator specifically that I'm playing on it isn't the best. So like, I don't know if I will continue it on my phone, but that is something I want to mention that I tried. Tales of Zestiria, I played for like 45 minutes to an hour maybe. I thought it was okay. I know people don't like that game, but I thought the characters and the visuals were fine. The combat I did not like. It was this weird combat where like it was supposed to be real time, but the movement wasn't, where like it seems like you'd be able to move around with full freedom, but you're only able to flick your stick to dodge and stuff. It was very weird, and so the combat I wasn't a big fan of. Tower of Fantasy I played because I played this a long time ago at launch, and so I decided to try it again. I'm on PlayStation this time because I played it on phone. It's still kind of janky feeling and looking, but I just pretty much went through the initial sequence, made my character. I will say the hook of the game is very good still. It starts kind of like right into action. You get to pick like whether you're gonna be a guy or girl. You go through the first kind of mission, get into combat, and then you get to design your character. And the environment itself of like the actual world I thought was very fucking nice. But yeah, I'll see if I go back to it. I just wanted to try it again because I was kind of bored from finishing Persona 4. But that was another game. And I probably played a few more games that I don't even remember. But the main reason I was doing this was just to pick a next game. And the next game that I actually ended up sticking with was Star Ocean Divine Force. I'm going to be talking about that today because I played like, I want to say 7-8 hours, maybe even near 10 at this point. And pretty much this is my first actual Star Ocean game. I played a bit of Star Ocean, the newest one. I forgot what it's called. It's called like Second something. It's like the Pixel game. It's a remake. I played a bit of that. I actually live streamed it on this channel on Cage Unlimited where I played the demo. I thought it was pretty good. The combat in the game was weird to me. I just never really understood it. And so like I just like kind of fell off of it, and it was a demo anyways. But Divine Force was a game that when I saw the trailer the first time it came out, it actually looked pretty interesting to me because it just looked like a good like real-time combat game. And honestly, I very much enjoy it. There's just a few negative aspects of it that I don't like too much, but overall I very much like it. So let me talk about some of those points. First of all, I think the characters of it are very good. The main thing I love is that the main character actually has a personality. He is fully voiced. He has a character, which I love. I just, coming from Persona where like the main character doesn't really have a personality, it's just very nice to go back to a game that does have a main character with personality, just like Trails of Cold Steel, for example. And so I really enjoyed that. And not just him, the other characters, they all have personalities. They have like some characters like each other, some characters don't. It's just a very funny vibe with the main character and the rest of the cast. So character work and character writing, I think, is pretty good so far. Traversal, I think in the game is really fucking good. Like just from like the offset when I was able to start running in the field, it felt very nice. The running felt really fast. The haptics, I'm playing on PlayStation, on the PlayStation Portal felt really fucking good of his steps. It felt really good. And on top of that, when they added the Duma system where you can pretty much kind of glide in the air and like fly a bit, the game in terms of traversal is like very fucking good. It really reminded me of East 9 actually, where you kind of get to run up walls and shit. Whereas in this, you don't get to run on walls, but you get to fly around and be speedy and traverse the environment a lot easier than most games, which is pretty cool. Also, a small thing, I think the UI is very clean looking and very clean feeling. I had more of a focus on that because after coming from Final Fantasy X, which I think the UI was very fucking bad, it was very slow, it was clunky, it looked bad. Coming to this game where like the UI is clean, it's very responsive and fast, I really like that. In terms of characters, everyone is playable, so like it's one of those type of games where like not only in combat but also in the field you can switch to any of the characters you have in your party and you can just play as them, which I thought was pretty cool. And each of them play like pretty differently, which is pretty cool. I mainly stick with the main character Raymond because I'm just used to him. But yeah, there's like already, I think we have 5, actually not 5, we have like about 7 people in my party, I think. So like there's a lot of people you get to choose from. Your active party is only 4 people, but like already there's like a decent amount of people in my party. And kind of jumping off characters, this game kind of, well, at least I thought had bonding moments, which is something that I actually like in games. The Trails games have this, which I really appreciate, where you kind of get to have character moments with certain characters, get a bit of plot between them, etc, etc. This game I thought it did, and it kind of does, where they said like at certain points of the game you can kind of go and walk around town and talk to your party members. And I believe this game called it private actions or something like that. that. I've been, playing for like almost 10 hours. It's only happened like once so far, which is weird, like at the starting of the game, and it's never happened again. There has been more times where I have been able to talk to party members outside of the town, but they weren't private actions. They were just like normal conversations you get to have with them. So I'm wondering whether that, comes into play more, or whether it wasn't that big of a mechanic as I thought. But yeah, they have some kind of a bonding mechanic. And the final thing I mainly want to talk about is the combat overall. This to me is kind of a negative because it's so weird, because pretty much what this game does, it uses an AP system, which is like this bar you have, and the AP bar is between 5 to 15 bars, I guess, or like squares, and every time you attack, your squares go down. So if your AP bar is only 5 full, you get to hit 5 times, and then you can't attack anymore. Not even like, I'm not even talking about skills, I'm talking about your normal attacks. And then if you want to get that back, you pretty much have to not run and just stay still, or just walk around, and then it'll come back up. And that's kind of annoying to constantly have to do in battle, which is kind of shit. And the more you dodge and the more you kind of evade in battle and blindside enemies, which is a mechanic, the more your bar can get higher and go up to a max of 15 AP. Now, the reason why this mechanic is weird is, like I mentioned, if it was attacked with skills and was more like an MP bar, I'd get it. But it's tied to your normal attack. So as in, if your AP is 0, you literally cannot fucking do shit. Like, you cannot attack, you cannot evade, really. You can dodge, but you can't do like the special evades you do in the game with your Duma system, which I won't go into. But everything is really tied to your AP, and the fact that it can go down and it goes down so fast is kind of annoying, which I don't like. And on top of that, something that I've been experiencing a lot more in the game is the game is way too fucking hard. I am playing on the easiest difficulty because real-time games I usually do, and it's still way too hard. And I don't even think it's to the fault of me, because pretty much anytime I get into a boss fight, immediately every single party member of mine dies, and I just can't do anything about it. And if I spend time trying to heal them, they just keep dying immediately. And the item system in the game is kind of weird, where like they have this cool feature where like at any point in the game you could press your touchpad and it just freezes the game, so you can use items at like your leisure. And so I'm like, oh, that's cool, so I can use potions and stuff. The issue is, if you use a potion, it unfreezes, and they have this fucking 85-minute animation of you using your potion every time, which is so annoying. Like, straight up, it's like, okay, I choose my potion, and the character does this. Okay, go into my pocket, get my potion. Okay, this is a potion, throw it up in the air. Okay, now I used it. Like, it's straight up that long for the potion to take effect. And what sucks is, you cannot move at all during that, and if you get attacked during it, the item doesn't work. So the freezing mechanic is kind of useless, because like anytime you use an item, you're fucking frozen in that animation for a while, which sucks. And because the game is so hard and my party members keep dying and the items take so long to use, I'm just kind of fucked in terms of the boss battles. And so at first I thought this was my fault, because I wasn't fighting all the enemies I could when I was exploring. So I'm like, maybe I'm underleveled. So I took like an hour, grinded, went from like level 19 to like 25. It was actually a lot more easier to fight enemies. I'm like, cool, I've done it. But I'm on a boss right now I was really fighting before I started recording. And again, it's just way too fucking hard. I fought him for like, I don't know, like 5+ minutes. And I got his bar down, his health bar down like by an eighth. And I died, and like there wasn't anything I could do. My party members kept dying. And I Googled this. I'm like, maybe this is an issue that's known. And pretty much what I see is like, yeah, your party members do die, and you really have to get into the nitty gritty to make them not die. So like things like give them specific skills and attach certain like chain combos to them, because everything in terms of combos is customizable by the player. Give them certain accessories, blah, 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 and then they might not die. And while I get that is something that may be pleasing to some people, for me, that's not why I'm playing the game. And the fact that I have to do all that just to have my party members not die is kind of shitty to me. So I'm really enjoying the game. I'm enjoying the story. The story I didn't even touch on is like, it's pulling me in so far. I like the characters. I kind of like the world where like the planet we've landed on is kind of like in a fantasy world, but our characters kind of like from a sci-fi world, which is a lot more advanced. So you have that dichotomy, which is cool. But if I can't advance in the game, that's an issue. So while I fully intended to play this game completely through, I do think that if I cannot get through this boss in the next like hour, I'm probably gonna drop the game, because I don't have time to waste like grinding and stuff just to fight these boss battles. Because even the first boss I fought, it was equally as hard, and the way I beat it was I kept dodge rolling, and then every 10 dodge rolls hit him twice, then I kept dodge rolling, then I hit him twice, and I kept doing that for like 10 minutes or whatever to beat the boss, and it was a fucking bad boss battle. It just wasn't fun to play, and if I have to do that for every boss, I just don't see why I would keep playing the game, which sucks. And so I'm going to keep trying to play the game for another hour or two, and if I see that it's still equally as hard to fight the bosses, I'm probably unfortunately going to drop the game, because I just don't see it as fun in my opinion. But yeah, those are my opinions on Star Ocean Divide Force. Really good game. It's just, I think, a bit too hard for me. And from there, we are done with what I've been playing. And from here, we're going to move on to the next segment, which is a JRPG that I would look forward to. So, as I mentioned in the intro, this segment is usually a JRPG I am looking forward to, but now is going to be a JRPG that I would look forward to. So, pretty much a hypothetical JRPG that I would want released. And this one is actually an existing JRPG, but I'd want a remake of, which is how I'm going to spin it this week, which is the Trails in the Sky series. Now, as if you've been listening to this podcast or like any of my videos, you know that I'm a huge Trails fan. And Trails in the Sky is a beloved series. A lot of people love it. A lot of people actually recommend it to like get into the Trail series because it's just a trilogy. Honestly, you don't even have to play the third game to get the full story, and so it's a pretty easy recommendation. The issue is it's a pretty old game. It is like a PSP era game where everything's kind of like these chibi models, which is like that, you know, with the kind of 2D, not really 3D. And on top of that, it isn't really the most accessible game. You can play it on Steam, you can play it there, but like, at least from my understanding, I do not think it's available anywhere else. I don't think it's on console or Switch or whatever. I think it's only on Steam. When I first played it, I played it on my PSP. I just hacked it to play it, but I did replay it at some point and I just bought all of them on Steam. And so I thought it would be a great idea to just remake the Trails in the Sky series with the modern Trails engine. And I feel like there's no evidence of this, but I feel like this could happen like very soon because you might as well. We're still in the same series, as in like we're still like following the same plot line. So if they really wanted to, they could, just so we have all the games on modern consoles. The only other games that are kind of that style are the Azure games, the Azure and Zero, and those were like very recently released to the West, like this year and last year. And so if they remake Trails in the Sky to be kind of the current style, I could see them doing that with Azure one day too. But I think Trails in the Sky is old enough, and I think a lot of people haven't played it. Were like, if they release that in the current style, they could really make it a big thing because it is a fucking fantastic game, beautiful story, beautiful characters, and seeing it in the kind of like modern Trails engine would be very cool. And on top of that, because we're still in the same like, you know, series, it's still the same story going on. I don't know if they should. If they really wanted to, they can do rewrites. I'm not sure if they need to because, like, for example, like Ouroboros is a pretty huge thing in the Trails games now, which is kind of like this evil organization. And I believe they had hints of it in Trails in the Sky, and especially in the third one, it was more prominent. But like, if they really want to, I could see them kind of making it more of an important thing in the game than maybe like more of the Ouroboros members are in the games or things like that. I don't think they need it. I don't think they have to rewrite the game. But if they wanted to make it slightly newer or fresh, I can see them doing it. I don't know if there's retcons in the games. If they want, they could rewrite those too. And honestly, the biggest reason why I'd want a remake for the Trails in the Sky games is because mechanically, it is pretty different from the mainline Trails games these days, specifically the bonding moment. So originally I played Trails in the Sky 1 like a long ass time ago, and then I went to the Trails of Cold Steel series, and that's when I actually got into the series, and then I went back to Trails in the Sky and played those. And when I went back to play the Trails in the Sky, the main thing that I realized was very much missing was the bonding mechanics. And the bonding mechanics, if you don't know, just like randomly throughout the game, you'll be able to talk to your party members, and then you get to have special cutscenes of like you guys hanging out or getting like specific character details, things like that. And I really enjoy that part of the game, not specifically because of the bonding moment, but because you get kind of like extra character moments. And on top of that, in Trails of Cold Steel, it actually boosted like the way you actually did combat. So if you had a higher, you know, link level or whatever with another character, you would do better moves with them. So I thought that was very cool too. And with Trails in the Sky, it wasn't that party oriented, so I don't think it mattered too much that there was no bonding. But like, if there could be more bonding somehow, I think that would be pretty cool. So between Estelle and Joshua, and obviously the way they end up in the future, it would kind of make sense if there's some kind of bonding moments. And throughout the game, you know, there's like the other bracers you kind of hang out with here and there. So I think if they were somehow able to implement the bonding mechanics into a potential remake of this game, that'd be really cool. And it would also kind of unify it with the rest of the Trail series as we have it today. And also, because it is a modern remake, you can just straight up have stuff that wasn't possible before. So the modern Trails games have voice acting. Trails in the Sky didn't have voice acting, which is something that I always forget about. But like, yeah, the original Trails in the Sky games did not have voices, but Estelle, Joshua, and a lot of the characters do have voice actors now. So like, you might as well just fully VO it now if you're going to remake it. That'd be pretty cool to see. And also visually, like, I would love to go through Libero and like go through kind of the hometown of Estelle and Joshua, and like go to the kingdom and see how that looks in full 3D and being able to explore it. Because I remember when I went from Trails Azure to Trails Reverie, being able to see the SSS and the entire, you know, town of Crossbell in 3D was really fucking cool. And so being able to do that with Libero would be like equally as cool. So I think that would be pretty awesome too. And the last point, as I kind of mentioned before, is like, accessibility wise, I think it's just about time to have Trails in the Sky playable and everything else. Like, even if they don't remake it and they just re-release the same games, like, I feel like Trails in the Sky should be playable at this point on PlayStation, on Switch. potentially on Xbox. I don't know if the other Trails games are on that or not, but like, yeah, just have the Trails games everywhere. So if they made a remake of Trails in the Sky, I feel like it would just be a cool positive for everyone involved, people who have played the game and people who haven't. But yeah, that was the first JRPG I would look forward to. Hopefully you enjoyed that. And now we're going to go on to our next segment, which is JRPG news. So in terms of JRPG news, we actually do have a decent amount of things here. Pretty exciting stuff. The first thing I want to talk about is Kingdom Hearts is now on Steam. This is something, if you're on social media, a lot of people are talking about. This is a lot of people are excited about. Me personally, I don't really care that much, honestly, because I'm mainly a PlayStation player and I can just play on my PlayStation. But yeah, it is on Steam. It's coming on Steam. It's coming on Steam on June 13th, but there's been a trailer released and it's pretty much everything. Kingdom Hearts 1.5, 2.5, 2.8, and 3. Everything will be on Steam. I think really the biggest takeaways for me personally is that it's going to be cool to be able to play Kingdom Hearts on the Steam Deck. That is awesome. Again, to me, it doesn't really matter because like, I can play on my portal, but like for people who are PC gamers and they want to play portably, being able to play Kingdom Hearts 2, 1, 3, whatever. 3 especially would be pretty cool to be able to play on the Steam Deck portably is really fucking cool. I wonder how they would run. We don't really know anything about that. And honestly, I don't even know if they are going to be compatible because not all games are compatible on Steam Deck. I'm not sure if they mentioned that. And secondly, I don't know much about the modding scene, but like I'm assuming if it's on Steam, it's gonna be maybe easier to mod, or there's gonna be more modding opportunities. That was at least my understanding of how games work. Maybe I'm wrong, but like, you know, it's available on Steam. Maybe there'll be more mods of it. That's always a cool thing. And so maybe we'll see more mods from the Kingdom Hearts games. But yeah, Kingdom Hearts on Steam on June 13th was the first news story. Now, the rest of the news segment will be very trailer heavy. And so I thought instead of me just watching all the trailers beforehand and just giving my thoughts like I usually do, I thought it'd be fun if we just kind of had like this varsity trailer react where like I would watch the trailer, talk about it, and obviously for the audio listeners, I would describe it as I watch it and then talk about what I saw. And so there's 4 trailers out. I'm only going to be watching 3 of them. The 4th trailer is for Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance. The only reason I'm not going to be reacting to it is because I just don't know much about the series. I do know a bit more because I played Persona 4, but I do have some notes. I kind of skimmed through it. Visually, I just thought it was very cool. And honestly, that's pretty much it. Like, I didn't have that much thoughts on it because I just don't know much about it. But the 3 trailers I'm going to be reacting to is first, there's the Wuthering Waves official release trailer. I've been talking about this game here and there on Spill the Tearal, so I just have to react to the news trailer. There's going to be an Elden Ring Shadow of the Earth trailer. Funnily enough, I don't know shit about Elden Ring either, but I thought I would just react to it because I think it's funny to react to something that I know nothing about, and because I also reacted to the last trailer, so I'm like, I might as well just keep going. And also there's a new Reynatis trailer, which is a release date trailer, which I thought I'd react to too. So let's start off with Wuthering Waves first, because that's the one I'm most excited for. Okay, so I watched the Wuthering Waves trailer. I'm actually cutting the reaction out of it from this episode because 1, they clearly have like a song that would like fuck my video in terms of copyright, and 2, it's just pretty much a music video, so there's really nothing to react to. When I was like reacting to it, it was just me saying like, oh, look at all these cool characters. But there's a new Wuthering Waves trailer. If you're interested, it just shows a bunch of characters in like cool situations. It's like a full CG trailer pretty much, so if you're interested in that, check that out. So the first trailer we're actually going to react to, is going to be in the episode hopefully, is the Elden Ring trailer, so let's move on to that. Okay, so the Elden Ring Shadow of the Earth trailer. Like I mentioned, I don't know shit about this game. I played this game for like 10 plus hours, but I was mostly just hanging around in the open world. I wasn't actually like, you know, doing story, so I don't know anything about the story. Funnily enough, in the comments I checked, it was just people saying they don't understand what's going on anyway, so it's not like you would understand if you played it too, I guess. Alright, it is showing a bloody foot or a hand. That's a hand. Ah, man, this is so gross. What the fuck was that? It's like a bloody hand like pulling some tendons or some shit. Couldn't tell what that was. She's walking on like bloody stuff too. Weird environment. This looks hella real, bro. It's like a girl like holding onto the strands, like the strands that she pulled like in the air with behind the golden sky. The sky's full with like a bunch of dead bodies. I can't tell what the hell that is. Like a mountain of dead bodies. Okay, now we got some like action. We got like a bunch of fucking fire giants and fire knights. There's like a dead body on the stairs with a lot of spear stabbed into him. There's a cool hooded person in the fire. Okay, we got some, I don't know what the fuck that is. Is that an enemy, bro? It's like a big ass dead dog looking shit. Okay, the hooded dude is doing something now with his hand. He brought some fire. It looked like he was gonna attack the dog looking thing. We got some like dragoon looking motherfuckers like all standing on the spears on top of a fire. It's panning up. We see like the big ass golden tree. I'm assuming that's the Earth tree that's in the title of the game. Okay, now it's more peaceful times. We're in what looks like more normal Elden Ring grass fields. You see some golden, there's this golden pillar with like a moon symbol they keep showing. I don't know what this is. A bunch of armored guys are looking at the gold pillar with the moon that I talked about. Is this like the show? I noticed that they're showing a lot of group shots. Is this like more multiplayer focus this time? Because the only way like Elden Ring was properly multiplayer like in a good way was through a mod, but this they're showing a lot of group shots in this. All right, so that was the Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree trailer. Like I expected, I didn't know what was going on. Really cool trailer, a lot of stuff, happening. It looked beautiful. But like I said in the comments, I was reading, like, even people who know the game understood nothing, and that's like the top comment. So like, even if I play the game, I'm sure I would get nothing. But it's kind of a good thing for people who played it. So I'm assuming it's a bunch of new stuff that's happening. So it's not like a small like update. So that's pretty cool for fans of the game. But yeah, that was the Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree trailer, and the last trailer we're going to be going to is the Reynatis trailer, which I'm pretty excited about, so let's start that now. Okay, they actually have subs on this trailer, which is nice, because the last few trailers I watched never had subs. Okay, so it's showing like an ocean with like rocks jutting out of it, red sky, blood-ass moon, presented by Furyu. Okay, show Shibuya, shows the main character Marin, kind of looking around. These look like more like proper CG cutscenes. Look at this red pills on the ground with kind of like a dead body. Shows the woman main character, I forgot her name, unfortunately. Okay, showing like a lot of characters in town. They're talking about Stray Wizards, Shibuya Owl's full support. I think Shibuya Owl was a group that the girls in, I think? Or is the opposite of the guys in? It's one of them. They want to increase the number of wizards in the world. Okay. It's one of those trailers where they have no sound effects, which is funny. You're showing like a rock environment with a lot of giants attacking like normal civilians, what it looks like. And the guy saved them, it seems like. Okay, now there's some combat here. One of the characters. I never saw that guy before fighting. It was like a fist-based character. Showing a girl with like bunny ears fighting this time. Cool looking enemies, like these armored looking beasts. Oh my god, the big ass rolling like cylinders coming at you in this fight. This dude looks like a fucking big dragon Yu-Gi-Oh character looking ass you fight in a fight. Is she related to the girl character? They showed like this other one with black hair. She looks very similar to the main girl character. There's some sewers, there's like a dead... The body on the ground didn't look like a dead body. It looked kind of like morphed into a bad guy, so I wonder if that's like a plot point. The environments look cool. Like this is like inside a church. Reynatis. Was that the entire... Whoa. Those 3 minutes went fast. What the hell? That's how you know I like this better than the Elden Ring trailer. For me, that one felt very long. This one felt like nothing. Okay. Nice. So that was a Reynatis trailer. Pretty much they show like mostly like story stuff. Unfortunately, I didn't get to read much of it because I was kind of like looking at it visually, but the game looks good. Showing a bunch of characters, a bunch of environments. And I'm probably going to watch it again on my own time just to see like what it was actually about specifically story-wise. But yeah, that's a pretty good trailer, honestly. And from here, we're going to go on to our next segment, which is JRPGs that are releasing this week. So for the JRPGs that are releasing this week, I'm going to be talking about JRPGs that are releasing from May 19th to May 25th. So firstly, we have a lot of games in kind of the same series. I'm going to be going over those first. So, and as usual, I source these from rpgsite.net and icicledisaster.com. Like last week, Icicle Disaster is still down. I don't know if that site's just gone forever now. Who knows? So I got all these from rpgsite.net. But the first game is Neptunia Sisters vs. Sisters on the Xbox Series and Xbox One, coming May 21st. Based on the consoles coming out, I'm assuming it's already on the other consoles because usually these type of games are mostly usually on PlayStation and Steam. But I have the logline, which is Neptunia Sisters vs. Sisters is an action RPG set in the vibrant world of game industry. Hack and slash your way through hordes of dangerous enemies found in this many dungeons throughout the land while trying to defeat a mysterious new phenomenon that threatens life itself. And so, in terms of the combat, based on the description you can tell, and I watched a bit of it too, it does look like it's action, real-time combat, which is nice. And I think this is like a shoot-off of the main game. I think the other one's the main one, which I'll be talking about after, which is more of the turn-based style. But yeah, it's a very much like anime girl game. It has some visual novelty cutscenes, but the combat honestly looked pretty good, and the visually it looks pretty nice too, the cel-shaded style. But yeah, graphically and all that looks cool. But yeah, that was Neptunia Sisters vs. Sisters on Xbox Series on May 21st. Also on May 21st, all on the Switch, we have the trilogy of Hyperdimension Neptunia Rebirth. So you're getting the first one, the second one, and the third one. I have the logline for the first one, which is packed with fast-paced, turn-based RPG action, fourth wall-breaking, trope-demolishing dialogue, and more item, weapon, and costume customization than you can shake a level 1 stick at. Game industry is a world set on turning the concept of the JRPG on its head. And by the way, whenever I say game industry in those descriptions, it's like game industry ending with an I. I think that's like a fake brand they have within the games, because I think the games are about a gaming company, and the games that you play are like games in the game or some shit like that. I'm not 100% sure, because the only things I know is from what I've talked about in the past Spill the Tearal episodes, but they have a lot of game series based on this series, and so that's what it's referring to. But yeah, like I mentioned, this one seems to be turn-based. I looked into it. Again, very anime girly, so like if you're not into that, don't play it. It doesn't really seem to be, interesting to me in terms of that. But it is visually novelty in terms of the cutscenes and the gameplay. The gameplay is similar to Trails, where it seems like is turn-based, but when it's your turn, you get to kind of move around. Unlike Trails, though, it seems like you have full movement. Like when I was watching gameplay, it seems like the character was just able to move around wherever they want in the circle, and then they're able to attack. So it is turn-based, but it does seem like it has kind of like a good degree of movement, which is cool. So yeah, the first, second, and third game are coming on Switch on May 21st. And on May 22nd, which is today, oh shit, today, is it coming out today, May 22nd? We have Wuthering Waves, which is coming out on mobile and PC. Again, I've talked about this game a lot. I've talked about this specifically a few episodes ago, which is, I'll read the logline right here. The story in Wuthering Waves is set after the calamity known as the Calamity raised the world of almost all human life. Desperate to survive, the survivors forge uneasy alliances to rebuild some semblance of civilization from its ruins. And this is a game that I'm actually looking forward to. Funnily enough, on my KH Limited channel, I have a video just for Wuthering Waves, which I cut out from one of my past Spill the Tearal episodes, which is me talking about why I'm excited for the game. And I think like an hour after I posted it, I got a notification on my phone saying the game was out. So I'm like, oh shit. So I downloaded the game. It turns out it was just out for like, preloading it. So like I have it, preloaded on my phone. And so when the game is out, I will try it. I was really hoping it would come out on PlayStation Day and Date, because if it was, this would probably be the next game I just like jump into, because I play everything kind of exclusively on my PlayStation Portal. But it's not. So I'll be playing it on my phone. I don't like playing games on my PC. And then from my phone, I'll see if it's actually like a game that you actually need to be kind of serious in. I'll attach a controller and we'll go from there to see how good it is. And obviously I'll give my thoughts on this podcast too. But yeah, Wuthering Waves coming out on May 22nd, which is apparently today. So maybe by the time this episode is out, you guys will already have it in your hands. And lastly, we have Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door on Switch coming out May 23rd, which is tomorrow from when I'm recording it. Synopsis is, The Thousand Year Door is that after 4 years of defeating Bowser, Mario is back, and this time he must collect the 7 crystal stars in order to save Peach from a mysterious evil clan called the X-Nauts, who are after the crystal stars to rule the world. I don't know shit about this game. I haven't played any of the Paper Mario games. I think I played like the OG Paper Mario, which I think it's this, like on an emulator like years ago, like when I was like in middle school, because I was really into it. And I never got that far into it because my computer was too shitty to emulate back then. But yeah, maybe I'll try this out one day. I've said this before. There are a bunch of JRPGs that I want to play that are stuck on the Switch, but I don't because they just never go on sale. So I just like, it's hard for me to spend the money just to try a game. So Xenoblade Chronicles is a series I really want to desperately try, but I cannot, convince myself to drop the 80, 90, $100, whatever it still is, just to try the game, which kind of sucks. And like, maybe there's a demo. You know what? If there's a demo, I might try it. But like, if there isn't, I don't know when I'm going to try it. But same with this. It's on the Switch. I'm not that into Mario in terms of like story-based games. Like I like the Mario games just for like, party games. But maybe I'll try this one day, and if I do, I will be talking about it on this podcast. But yeah, that is coming out on May 23rd on the Switch. And those are all the releases happening in this week. And from here, we'll go on to the next segment, which is a JRPG mechanic or character or whatever that I think is dope. So the JRPG kind of trope or whatever that I want to talk about that I think is cool. And this is something that I realized in my playthrough of Star Ocean Divine Force, which is, and this is something that I see in anime a lot too, but I still want to mention it, which is a character in position of power that is your homie. I really like that. And me just saying it, you might be like, what the fuck does that mean? But I mean specifically, like, there are a lot of anime or games or whatever, whenever like your main crew or party is in a situation that they can't get out of, but then when they reveal that you have a homie or a friend in a high position of power that kind of gets you out of that situation, I really love that. It really makes me happy. And that pretty much happened in the Star Ocean game that I'm playing, where like, yeah, our crew just entered the city, the guards are all after us, they're threatening us to take us to jail, and you find out the guy who's kind of running the city is like tight and like related to some people in your party, and he pretty much lets us in, and we're all cool from there. So I really like that trope. You see it in anime a lot. You see it in Mashal, where like he's kind of homie to the principal, so like he's kind of untouchable from that respect in terms of what he's going through in the story. Black Clover, obviously, with him being homies with the Wizard King. And also, yeah, it's just like an anime, you see that a lot. And in gaming, I see this a lot in the Trails games especially, where like slowly throughout Trails of Cold Steel specifically, the amount of friends you get in high positions of power are like insane. I want to say one of the earliest ones are probably Elliot's dad. He's kind of like, I don't know a specific position, but he's like a commander or something of one of the military troops. And so you kind of have it in there where like, if there's something military related, at least someone in your party, Elliot, one of those people is his dad, so you're kind of close there. But as you go through the game, you get so much more like allies, like through your principal, through the many teachers. So many of the parents of your party are actually important people that kind of give you connections in some places. So like this trope is seen like everywhere in Trails of Cold Steel. Yeah, just specifically the moment that I like, as I mentioned, is like whenever the main party is in absolute shit, and then it's revealed that there is someone who's connected to you in a high position of power that is able to help you get out of the situation. I really dig. And that's pretty much all I want to talk about. It's not that long, but yeah, I really like that trope that you see in anime and in JRPGs too. And from here, we'll go on to the final quick segment, which is the JRPG casual top list. Now, for my JRPG top casual list, this is a segment where I just casually throw out a top list and kind of tell you all of them right off the bat. And this week, I'm going to be doing my top JRPG combat styles. There is a small, tiny chance that I might have done this already. Unfortunately, usually I write all my notes beforehand. I just found out right now during recording, I forgot to completely make my top list, so I just thought of this topic real quick. And so if I did in the past, I apologize. I will try not to do that again. But pretty much I'm going to be choosing my top 3 JRPG combat styles. And I try my best to keep the 3 pretty different, so it's not like I picked like 3, like if I wanted to, I could pick like 3 games that all have similar combat styles that I love, and like it's easy as that, but I didn't do that. So the top 3 I'm going to do is number 3 is Ys, number 2 is Kingdom Hearts 2, and number 1 is Trails of Cold Steel. So number 3 is Ys. The Ys games are a real-time combat game, and I really like the combat style because it's real-time, but it's very, very simple, where like there's no like real combos or like specific like abilities, whatever you got to use. It's just straight up like it's almost button mashy. You have some abilities you got to do, which are pretty much just like different shapes of your moves. I want to say pretty much like, say if you're using arrow and you have a sword attacks, one of your abilities might be a lunge, so it's more of like straight line attack. One of them might be a spin, so it's more of like a circular attack, things like that. And on top of that, you get to switch to different characters. So one of them may be like a bow and arrow character, one of them may be a fist character, and the kind of entire combat, style of the game is like based on rock, paper, scissors, where like, I can't remember the specifics, but like sword attacks are better on like certain type of creatures, fist attacks are better on certain type of creatures, etc. And so based on the enemy you're fighting, you're supposed to switch to that character so you could get the advantage. But the nice thing is they make it very obvious when you're using the wrong character for the type of enemy. Like they'll have like a certain sound effect, like as if you're not doing damage, so you can just switch to them whenever you want. And the main reason I like the combat style is because it's very like chill. Like you can kind of turn your brain off and play the game because it's very kind of button mashy. You kind of get through it, especially if you play on easier difficulty like I usually do. And again, if you're fighting an enemy that is not of your weakness, it's kind of obvious to tell based on you fighting them. Your damage numbers are very low, they're different color, you have a sound effect, and so you can switch to pretty easily. So I think it's just a very chill real-time combat system, which I really appreciate. And number 2, I have Kingdom Hearts 2. I fucking love Kingdom Hearts 2. I love the combat style. I still think to this day Kingdom Hearts 2's combat style is the best in every Kingdom Hearts game. I don't think they've ever like gotten better than that. And another game that I want to give honorable mention, which is very similar to Kingdom Hearts 2, is Phantasy Star Online. This is like a game that's like not like Kingdom Hearts 2 at all in terms of like it's not really story based or anything. It's like an real-time combat MMO, and I played with my brother for like a bit, and like we were surprised that the combat is very fucking good, very fluid, and feels very much like Kingdom Hearts in the vibe it gives. And so Kingdom Hearts 2, that game, the type of like flowy real-time combat style I really appreciate. You obviously have to be a lot more locked in than something like Ys, but like in terms of real-time combat style, I think Kingdom Hearts 2 is kind of like the peak in my opinion in gaming where real-time combat is concerned. And at number 1 we have Trails of Cold Steel. I personally prefer turn-based games. I think they're a lot more chill. I'm kind of shit at games, so having a turn-based game where I can kind of stop and think is a lot better for me. And specifically in Trails of Cold Steel, I love the games, and I think they do their combat style perfectly for me. The combat style does change within the Trails of Cold Steel games, where they add some mechanics here and there. They have like brave orders where you can order different party members. They have like special ultimates you can do in some games, and they add stuff, they remove stuff, blah blah blah. But the base mechanics of the turn-based structure, where like it's turn-based, you have your attack, you have your arts, you have your CP skills, you can move around during turns, your moves have like AoE circles or lines that aren't really grid-based, so you can kind of fidget it to get more enemies into your line of attack. And it's not grid-based, which I really like, because in grid-based games I kind of hate like whenever you have an attack that does, for example, 2 grid attack, and if an enemy is just barely in your grid, you're just fucked. When this game is usually a little more lenient. And so because of that, Trails of Cold Steel I think is like a perfect turn-based game for me. And also what I like, it's a step above normal turn-based games where like you have no freedom of movement, like for example Pokemon, or honestly even Persona and Persona 4 that I played. Whenever it's like a base turn-based game, which is just like you don't move or anything, you're just using your attack item and that's it. It feels usually boring to me, and that's usually when I get to the point where I'm just kind of button mashing, kind of getting through the game because it's not that fun. So I kind of appreciate Trails of Cold Steel kind of changing it up where like positioning actually matters. It matters where the enemies are grouped up, where you are, etc., but it doesn't matter as much as a full-on grid-based combat game. So Trails of Cold Steel is number 1, Kingdom Hearts 2 is number 2, and Ys is number 3. And from here, we will end episode 16 of Spill the Tearal. Hopefully you enjoyed that. This might be a longer episode, especially when I add on the Persona part in this episode. But yes, as I mentioned at the start of the episode, If you are listening to this podcast, please rate it 5 stars. That helps me out immensely. And if you are even watching it on YouTube and you do appreciate the show, if you can go on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or whatever and give it like 5 stars or whatever the rating system is, I'd hella appreciate it. Thank you so much. And if you're watching on YouTube, remember to like if you like it and to subscribe if you're new. And I will see you guys in episode 17. Peace.